So, the push press. Interesting exercise because it moves through a couple different positions in the shoulders. The first one being the abduction and adduction. So abduction through the concentric portion as the shoulder moves out along the frontal plane and around the anterior posterior axis. And then the adduction comes in on the eccentric on the way back down to the front rack position. But on top of that, it also moves through flexion extension. So the shoulder flexes basically all the way up and then extends back to that front rack position. And that moves through the sagittal plane and around the medial lateral axis. So that was reverse warrior, I guess moving from warrior 2 to reverse warrior back. This is lateral, or I guess lumbar lateral flexion. Lumbar lateral flexion moves through the frontal plane and around the anterior posterior axis. So with the scap push-ups, that is moving the shoulder girdle through protraction and retraction. This is again through the sagittal plane and also around the medial lateral axis. So the back squat demonstrates knee flexion and extension. This is done through the sagittal plane and is also done around the medial lateral axis. Alright, so for hip external and internal rotation, or I guess you want to call it medial and lateral rotation, we'll be looking at skating and specifically the crossover. So with the crossover, if I'm going to my left, my right leg is going to internally rotate and push off, and then my left leg, as my right leg comes over, is going to be externally rotating to take the next step and push off from that position. With skating, we're looking at the internal or medial rotation on the crossover on the outside leg as it pushes off and then recovers. As it's recovering and the skate lands, the inside leg is doing external or lateral rotation to push through to complete that cycle. This is through predominantly the sagittal plane. That means that we're looking at the longitudinal axis if we're just simply looking at hip rotation. So Buckminster Fuller has given us this interesting concept of tensionegrity. I think it's really important to actually go through the steps in building this model and this structure to really get a sense of when you hit that moment that everything fits together and is no longer a threat to eyeballs and that sort of thing. When it all fits together and is secure, it is a pretty cool little structure. So the interesting thing is when we're looking at it in terms of the human body and training, the obvious conclusion would be, the dowels or the planks being bones, so withstanding some pretty high compression rates, and then the soft tissue, ligaments, tendons, muscle, fascia, being the elastics. Now, again, that's pretty surface level stuff. That's pretty analogous. We're looking at what this means for clientele and training. We're looking at one system, one complete system, where if you tug on one spot, it changes the entire structure, assuming we have some grounding on another. And so what ends up happening is that I'm going to guess, unless you're really, really good at creating these structures, and you're dealing with materials that are very rendered very consistent, right? So I took this dowel, I had to hand cut the lengths and hand cut the notches. So I can't guarantee that they're 100% consistent, nor can I guarantee that the pack of elastics that I bought at Staples 6 months ago are all similar. If you look at them closely, some of them have little frays. So when we're relating that to the body, I mean, we're looking at different muscles and muscle groups in the body, whether this represents a knee or the entirety of a body. We're going to get a bunch of asymmetries regardless of who we're talking about. And plus, I mean, those properties, those initial properties, some of them can be changed, right? So if we look specifically at this model, this dowel here, in relation to the others, kind of twisted, right? Can we forcibly and externally change that? Yeah, of course, right? So that would be cueing proper position in a shoulder, spine, hips, ankle, foot. You can cue an asymmetry and bring a human structure into proper posture and position. But some things you can't without surgery. So if I had instead cut this dowel a ½ inch, an inch longer, that would change the complete structure of this model. And so, you know, we will see that as trainers here and there with somebody that has you know, a leg that's longer than the other, or even something as simple as like scoliosis, or just some sort of asymmetry in bone growth in the body. So I don't know, I found this to be a very enlightening task to put it together, and then, you know, to look at it through positioning and posture in human body is fascinating. And I mean, I could see myself or other trainers even using this exact structure when bringing up a topic like posture and an asymmetry with clients, because sometimes clients can take things a little personally, right? If you tell them, yeah, your right shoulder's you know, not equal to your left, they might take that as a personal attack. But if you break it down to just mechanics and engineering, it might remove that layer of or I guess personal attack, you know, and the potential of them perceiving it that way. So, yeah, that was my experience with tendon aggregate.